Welcome back to Desk Careers. I am so excited to bring another incredible guest. Today we are meeting with Sabeeca Sajid, who is an aspiring clinical psychologist and mental health enthusiast, and she's the founder of Safe Haven. Welcome, Sabeeca. How are you?
Hi, good morning. I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. I'm so excited to have you here. And I think I'm the most excited because of how young you are and your aspirations. September is all about health and well-being and medical and mental health careers and all things in what we would consider traditionally as the medical industry. So to bring someone so young with such great aspirations, I believe is going to be an incredible inspiration to our younger students. Before we get into how you came up with the idea of Safe Haven, I want to learn a little more about the young lady that sits ahead of me here. Can you take me back to when you knew at what age you were or what grade you were in that you knew clinical psychology was the aspiration for you, and more importantly, that you wanted to be specializing in mental health?
I went through a lot of detours before I found psychology, and I'll talk a bit more about it. But the thing is, I never complained. So in the beginning, I was a bit like complaining about it, like why didn't I find it sooner before I took all of these detours? But I think that's just natural because so in high school, actually, I was in the scientific stream. I completed my IGCSEs in 2014, and at that time, I knew I was interested in science, but and actually at that time, I really wanted to become an environmental engineer. So I was like very enthusiastic about helping nature, helping animals, and such things. But then I couldn't really find many unis back then that would teach this course. And after that, someone told me about architectural engineering. It was a uni where my sister was studying, and I looked into architectural engineering, and I was like, okay, what is that about? So another thing about me is like, yes, I love helping people, but creativity is also my strength. And so then I was like, okay, maybe I can look into design. And it was actually in the third year of my architecture degree that I was 17, by the way, when I entered architecture, and uh, it was around the time when I was 19 years old that I had this kind of feeling that I want to do something more. And then I was like, what is it? And around that time, special needs was gaining momentum within UAE. And a lot of schools were talking about inclusion and such practices. And so I thought that I saw that a lot of work is being done for children, even now. Like, I think we've come a long way to help those with special needs. But then I also wanted to know what is being done for adults. And that is when I started volunteering at Mawahib, which was a place for people of determination, but who are adults, and they were being helped through art. And at that time, I realized, like, when I started volunteering with them, is when I realized it was so rewarding. It like, yes, I love designing, but then I felt that this was way more fulfilling. Like, I'm not saying I don't like designing, but it just felt different. And the whole 2 years until I finished my architectural degree. So architectural degree is 5 years. So when I was in my third year until my fifth year, the whole time I was debating if I should change my major, as like, and architecture is quite expensive. So I was uh, like, what are my parents gonna think? Will my friends support me? So I think social support is a big component of this, of helping the youth choose what do they want to choose. Because especially in UAE, for a long time, we are dependent upon our parents until we are financially stable. So that kind of support matters a lot. So that is one thing I would say. And finally, by the time I was in my fifth year, for the next 2 years, from third to fifth year, I was doing a lot of volunteerships with, and even some internships with organizations that help people with special needs. Um, and as soon as I finished my architectural degree, I was looking for undergraduate bachelor's degrees, because I just knew it. I just knew it inside me that I need to do psychology, and I specifically want to do clinical psychology because I had seen that when I was helping people with special needs, it was on their face. You can tell that you've made a difference in their lives, and it was an incredibly humbling experience. And I knew that I asked myself that, can I see myself 5 years from here working in an architectural firm, or can I see 5 years from here? Can I see myself working with like industry where I'm helping people? I'm helping people figure out what their struggles are and devising a therapy plan for them and so on. So that's when I was like, yeah, I want to do clinical psychology, and I don't mind doing another undergraduate for that. And actually my mom was incredibly supportive for that, and so were my friends. And they said the same thing, as you had already told me earlier, that they were like, you're lucky that you found what you wanted to do at this age, because you're still young. And for some people, it takes until their 30s to find that out. And so I
Oh,
think something that I really believe is that schools play an important role in it. Schools really need to like uh, broaden what they're teaching so that students can better identify what their strengths are. And I don't think, at least the school that I went to, and a lot of schools, they don't teach psychology. They don't teach humanity related courses. It's more of like science and commerce, and math and English. So had I known before, what humanities are, what sociology is, and so on, so I think that would have made it easier.
Sabeeca, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, I knew you were inspiring before we actually started this conversation, but what I'm even more inspired by right now is your authentic description of the experience that you had. In front of me, I see a very confident young woman who, even though she knew at a gut feeling that architecture wasn't for her, she completed it. What made you? I know that you said you were worried about how your parents would feel and the type of support from family. And I know a lot of our students and young people around the world sometimes feel that they have to stay in a path because the fear of letting their family and friends down is almost greater than the fear of continuing on that journey. Now that you've become an architect, you've completed that degree, and you're starting your new journey towards becoming a clinical psychologist, what have you learned about yourself that you think, if I were younger again, I might have done this slightly different? Or would you have continued on the same path?
So something that I learned is to always be true to yourself. And I think that got lost somewhere when I was a teenager. Because when you're around the age of 13 and 14, that's when, at least in IGCSEs, you're choosing what you want to do in the future. And I think I was too young to decide that, because that's also the age where teenagers are finding out about the question of who am I,
Mm.
and that was a lot of burden on me to like figure out who am I in the social realm, who am I ambition wise, and so on. um my first my like, when we are younger, we are always like, I want to be XYZ when I grow up. And so when I was in FS, I always knew that I want to be a doctor. But then I was like, I just didn't know what type of doctor. So I was more into being an astronaut and those things. But I always knew that science would be my thing. But I think through the immense pressure that is placed on teenagers to like find out who are you, find out what your ambitions are, XYZ, and while also trying to study for your IGCSEs and get good grades in them, I think there were a lot of compromises I had to make on the way so that, I can get good grades, I can do XYZ. And so something that I've learned through the long way is that to stay true to yourself and to try and really, I don't think we do that enough. We don't question ourselves enough. We don't introspect enough. And I don't know to what extent that's taught in schools, because for me, I learned introspection through a university elective. It was called critical thinking. And our professor made us do a lot of introspection, and it is extremely valuable because the more we delve into ourselves, the more we will find out about our truth, and the better we will be able to explain it to people so that we can convince them. Like you said, that some people are scared about their parents' reaction, about their friends' reaction, and so on. So when we find out more, we can explain it better to them as well and be more convincing. Because at the end of the day, I still do have friends who are in their early 20s and late teenage years, and their parents do not approve of them studying psychology, because either they say that it's not lucrative, we don't know what kind of future it has, and so on. Um, but the thing is that you need to always remember that you're gonna live your life. You know, no one else is gonna live it for you, and there does come a point, because I have heard from people who are in their 30s, and they're they're a teacher, they're a professor, they're in these professions, but then they always wanted to be a dancer, for example, but their parents never approved of it when they were growing up. And they're like, I wish I could get my years back. And because they can't right now, they're trying to be a dance teacher on the side, like they're trying to take choreography lessons at this age, which shows that it's never late. But the thing is, like, if you go with this kind of mindset that what will people think of me, putting people before you when it comes to your ambitions, there might come a point in your future where like where you regret the decisions you make, or you know like such feelings start seeping in. So I think from the get-go, I would say that to my younger sibling, that I'm like, always remember that you're going to live your life. You're confused right now, but being confused and finding an answer is better than like being confused and letting people guide you and take you wherever they want, because that won't be fulfilling in the end.
Sabeeca, how old are you?
I'm 23.
I feel like I'm listening to an incredibly wise woman who's lived years and years. You're so attuned and you're so aware of what you've learned and what you've gained, and that wisdom is definitely coming through. Let's talk about Safe Haven. What is Safe Haven and what inspired you to become the founder?
So, Safe Haven is an online mental health initiative that I have recently started, and I'm still trying to start different projects with it within Dubai and to work more about mental health awareness. And the things that I started it in my second year of university. So, like, the progress is a bit slower because I'm still studying, but I don't want to stop. I'd rather be slow than completely stopping. And what inspired it is that it was actually started midst the coronavirus lockdown last year. And there was just so much suffering in the world. Everyone was going through anxiety or depression like feelings. And suicide rates were increasing and people were out of jobs. And there were just, even mental health professionals themselves, even their mental health was declining. And it was just a horrible time. And I always knew I wanted to so I have this kind of feeling that I want to be someone someday who works for themselves, yes, for a time being, you have to be an employee and you have to work for people, but it's just one of my aspirations that someday I want to own my own initiative or organization or things like that. But during the coronavirus pandemic and lockdown, I just had this voice in my head that I cannot wait anymore. This is the right time, because people wanted someone who's talking about mental health. We need more awareness about it, even now with everything that's still going on in the world. We are blessed to be in the UAE and have a lot of good protocols in place, but I know people in other countries haven't been that lucky, and a lot of other things are going on in the world as well. And so right now is the best time to talk about it. And that was really a big push for me, because I always thought I would do it once I'm done with my undergraduate. There's again this thought of, will people take me seriously because I'm an undergraduate student? Because I have had people even in architecture tell me that they didn't think I was serious because I was 20, or they didn't think I could be serious because I'm a teenager. But the thing is, the thing is that we need to tell our students as well that no matter how big or small, there is a difference that only you will make, no matter how young you are, you know? And so I just thought that what would it look like if I completely ignored those voices? You know, I did this thing not only as a service to people and to like educate them about mental health, but also as something for myself that I wanted to show myself like what would it look like if I was optimistic and if I kept on going anyway, you know?
I'm
So
so inspired. I'm absolutely so inspired. What types of activities or initiatives is Safe Haven taking right now?
so right now I make artwork which is original, and I do that because the thing is like even if someone cannot understand English language, they for sure can understand art. And so through that, I try to educate people about different mental health topics. For example, recently I made a post about men's mental health, where we don't talk about men's mental health enough, and suicide rates are actually much higher in men than women. Although in a clinic, you would see more women coming to a clinic than men. And I think it has a lot to do with the stigma again. And so the main thing with Safe Haven is to destigmatize mental health, because I think it's high time we do that. We have destigmatized a lot of topics, such as talking about the LGBTQ rights. We have destigmatized the concept of special needs, you know. But I don't know why mental health is still like much behind all of these topics, especially in the majority of the world. Like, yes, in some parts of the West, people are talking about mental health more, but it's not the same everywhere in the world. And my main aim is to show people that mental health is just as important as physical health. Like, I don't see a reason that why if someone had a pain in their heart or even a flu, like the next day they would be in the hospital, they want to know if it's coronavirus, for example, because I have the flu. But if they're sad, the first thing that usually in adults that pops up in their mind is like, I can go through myself, or what will people think, or like, you know, yeah, such things like maybe people will name call me, or do I have the funds, or such thing. What will my parents think? For youth, for example, it's more of like, will my parents understand? And so the thing is like, if you're sad, it's just like having a stomach ache. Like, why wouldn't you go to a doctor and talk about it? I have seen a lot of my friends, you can tell that they really need a professional's help, but then they're like, I can do this myself. And I think that comes from a place of not, first of all, not being enough aware about mental health. And secondly, I also think that maybe when they were younger, they weren't shown how to reach out for help, because they weren't made aware about, professionals who are there to help them. And so they grew up thinking that I can do this myself, I don't need another person. And so the thing is to educate the youth that it's okay to ask for help. We are all human, and it's normal to suffer, especially in these times. And so yeah, the main aim of it is to destigmatize mental health. And there are some projects in the future that are coming up as well. For example, I'm aiming to talk more about women in psychology. How many times have you heard about Freud and Carl Jung, for example? But how many times have you heard about the founder of EMDR, for example? She was a female. And there have been like so many such females within psychology that we don't hear about. And also about the concept of cross-cultural psychology. Like, there have been contributions from Arab professionals in the past, like Arab scientists in the past or Asian scientists in the past, but we rarely hear about that. So one of my aims is also to like bring light to that.
Amazing. Amazing. Sabeeca, let's bring this into context. Anybody watching this right now, we need to remember Sabeeca is 23 years old. She completed her architecture undergraduate degree, and she is currently doing a psychology undergraduate degree. And she founded Safe Haven through the COVID pandemic because she realized at an instinctual level that it was now time to do something and bring forward that desire to help other people. Sabeeca, and listening to what you're telling me, I still connect the passion of art in and this creativity that comes from a creative being who would want to study architecture. So I think if I were your career practitioner when you were a teenager and you would have come to me saying, Miss V, I want to be an architect, I might have been able to help you understand that it's the creativity that you were craving,
Yeah.
and maybe at that moment architecture was the way that you could use that creativity. Do you see any of those transferable skills from architecture, from the world of architecture, and how you're able to mold it into Safe Haven and creating this new platform?
Yeah, actually, when I started it, the other thing was also that, sometimes I get these intense ideas in my head, like visual ideas. I think in pictures, and I'm like, I need to put them out somewhere. So even like right now, I also paint. Like it's one of the ways that I can remain optimistic in like this chaotic world. And I paint, I make art, or I make such projects. So when I started Safe Haven, it was like that as well. I was having these ideas about how I can spread awareness about mental health through art. And so I was like, come on, I have to put this into practice. So yeah, that was there definitely.
Absolutely incredible. What kind of advice do you offer to a young person watching you right now? Somebody who might be really confused about what they want to be doing. I know you said, nobody's going to live your life. You're going to be living
Yeah.
your life. So try not to put too much importance on the fear of what other people think. But what other tips can you offer a young person who might love so many subjects or might not really understand how any of the subjects they're currently learning can inspire a career?
Okay, so the thing that I have seen, and this is just from my experience, I don't know if there are any studies on it and all, but the thing that I have seen from my experience is like there's two kinds of motivation. So one is intrinsic and one is extrinsic. And a lot of people around me, because I'm studying psychology, are intrinsically motivated. They are working not for the salary, they're not working for the demand or anything like that. They're working because they want to help people. So it's more of an intrinsic thing. But for some people, their motivations are extrinsic, where like they either want to work for like what's in demand right now or in the future, or they want to work for something which is lucrative. So something that I would say is to first figure out the meaning, like what meaning does an ambition hold for you? And then, for example, I'm able to do psychology while also doing art. So for me, it's more of an intrinsic thing, but it doesn't have to be like that for everyone. So I was like, okay, I can still be creative and, start my mental health initiative while studying psychology. So it was more of about what meaning does it hold for me. Whereas for some people for whom it might be about salary or demand, they might want to, if they're studying psychology, they might feel like they want to do industrial psychology because it's way more lucrative than clinical psychology, and creativity doesn't really matter that much to them. It's the demand and it's the salary that matters. So I think to figure that out first, like what meaning does it hold for you? Like why do you want to do it? Why is very important, because actually we were studying in educational psychology earlier last year that once you have a meaning behind what you're doing, there's going to be much more motivation and dedication from your part. You'll be much less likely to give up because you'll be able to remind yourself of why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sabeeca. That was absolutely inspiring listening to you. And I really, really appreciate how genuinely authentic you've been. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
And that brings us to the end of an incredible conversation. Today, we spoke with 23-year-old Sabeeca Sajid, who is an aspiring clinical psychologist and a mental health enthusiast. Alongside, she has founded the incredible mental health program called Safe Haven. How can we find Safe Haven, Sabeeca?
It's on Instagram. It's at the rate of SAFE_HAVEN_MH.
Fantastic. And we'll see you all at our next Desk Careers Digital Spotlight.